Hi, my name's Markham. I'm the Dean and President of Virginia Theological Seminary, and I've been asked to provide a reflection on Luke chapter 12 to 14. So, to understand Luke, you have to actually understand the achievement of Luke. The purpose of the Gospel is to explain the way in which Jesus fulfills the messianic prophecies of the Old Testament. And because it's a sibling of the book of Acts, Luke went on to write the history of the church, this Gospel is intended to explain the pivotal time hinge, the transformative work of Jesus, the journey to the cross. The sources that Luke's using are, of course, Mark's Gospel, Q, which is a source of sayings that Luke shares with the Gospel of Matthew, and the Luke's own material. Almost all the material in chapters 12, 13 and 14 actually belong to Q and to the Luke's own source. All the great themes of Luke come out here. The sense of journey, the sense of the obligation to be transformed by a total commitment to the gospel, the importance and centrality of the poor. So, chapter 12 begins with the encounter with the Pharisees, the challenge that involves, and the obligation to sell and give everything you have to the poor. In Luke, there's a radicalism. In Matthew, it's mitigated a little bit, but in Luke, you've got to have a clear commitment. And of course, you have that powerful story of the rich man who imagines that he's going to be so rich and wealthy that he can pull down his barns and put even more grain into those barns, only to find out that that was the night that God was going to take that soul. Eating, drinking and being merry is not necessarily the promise for that man. You then have, as you flow in to the end of that chapter, one of the hardest texts in the Gospels. The way in which family values disappear when you're committed to the gospel, when you're committed to the kingdom, it will demand everything of you. Into chapter 13, you have a healing story. Again, he's criticised by those close to him because he's having temerity to heal on the Sabbath. And Jesus simply points out, look, if an oxen falls into a ditch, you would get the oxen out. So if there's need, you have an obligation to meet that need. Conflicts with the authorities are embedded in this text, and then you come to chapter 14. Here you have a classic Lucan theme, the centrality of meals. Meals are a matter of celebration, and it's also an encounter for social structure. You have all the issues around meals reflected here. Observe the etiquette and then get invited to come higher up. And then in conversation, Jesus is invited to engage with the obligation to include those on the margins and those who are poor. The whole section concludes with the obligation to be salt that permeates the entire land, so anticipating the work of the church.